We live in a world of persuasion, a world in which we are constantly attempting to persuade someone or being persuaded by someone else, whether that be mass marketing, whether that be deciding where to go for dinner that night. Persuasion is all around us and is an important aspect of public speaking. Many cases, you will be in front of an audience, presenting to an audience, in order to attempt to persuade them, to engage them, to get them to change something, to perhaps buy a product. So let's take a quick look at persuasion. Let's talk about the importance of persuasion as we encounter it. The ethics. Ethics always must be one of our main concepts to review when we talk about persuasion. We'll look at some of the psychology, the different types of persuasion, and we'll begin our discussion on Monroe's motivated sequence. Wherever there is persuasion, there is rhetoric, and wherever there is rhetoric, there is meaning. This is important for us because we oftentimes give persuasion and rhetoric as if they are devil terms, they're bad things. However, this is how we get things done. This is how we experience the world. This is how we interact, is through the rhetoric and the persuasion. There are multiple techniques of persuasion. As you can see from this simple chart, some are very ethical. Other ones, you begin to question if they have ethics involved. We love to think that our persuasion comes from that first column, from the logical argument, the reasoning, the scientific evidence. Unfortunately, the true fact is that much of our decisions come from advertising, from the emotional appeal we have in it. Because yes, we might love, gee, that car's #1 safety rated. That car's gas mileage is wonderful. But you don't see that in the commercial. Instead, you see the joy and the happiness that the car brings to a family when they purchase it, the wonderful trips they take to the seaside, to the mountains, to the world. And for this reason, most of our advertising relies heavily on emotions. It presents an image. It absolutely engages you, tells you about tradition, it seduces you. It makes you feel that, yes, this product is an answer to a greater problem we have. And we also see this when we appeal to people for aspects of nonprofits and for organizations that we care about. We talk about the emotional harm that occurs because of the loss of water in an area or the changes brought about by global warming and climate change. We see all these emotional appeals, and often this is how we decide. And then we later go back and we attach the logic that would be utilized in making that. There are different aids, body language. That's why I wanted to be standing up, not just a head floating on the computer today, it's because I want you to see that indeed, body language, the open stance, the vulnerability, the not closing down, but the opening, actually is very, very important in persuasion, because that is how you'll connect with your audience. The communication, the words that we choose, and the sales techniques such as Monroe's motivated sequence. Of course, you can encounter other ones that may not be as effective, but we love to hear about them in sci-fi and horror movies. Deception. Deception, of course, leads directly to unethical. And deception can occur in persuasion when you promise something, but you don't deliver that, where you come short on that. Hypnosis would be a very unique approach to sales and to persuasion, but it's also very unethical because you're not engaging a person's right mind. Using power and authority. This happens, of course, when we're young, when we're told, you will not do that. We're leaving the store now. And all these other concepts. They are a form of persuasions that parents have to use from time to time to get compliance from a child that might be unruly. Or it might be a coach on a team that absolutely they're going to use their power. I am in charge, so I will say what happens. Subliminal advertising, we hear about this a lot. Take time to research it. You'll find this not as effective as they say, but this would be a case of where they just suddenly flash a picture of a cola or perhaps of a desert, or perhaps of food on the screens, too quick for your mind to register it. But they believe the subconscious registers it and will motivate you to do the purchase. All these are unethical. Of course, when you talk about other techniques like brainwashing, mind control, and torture, all those go completely on the unethical and also are proven not to be very effective techniques of true persuasion. This always brings us back to ethics. Where we manipulate someone, we automatically are going to have ethical concerns. And you will see this oftentimes in demagoguery and propaganda. And what their first goal was, they will depress you. And after you become depressed, oh, you're not living a great life. Things aren't as good for you as they should be. Things are bad. Then they will create paranoia. And that paranoia will be, things aren't good for you. Things are bad because of. And then they'll choose an out group to blame for the potential why things aren't as great as they should be. Perhaps another company, perhaps a social group. There are multiple ones, but you will suddenly feel fear. So you have sadness, depression, fear. Applying all these in persuasion is unethical. And then afterwards, they offer you, only I can lead you out, only this product can change your life, only this solution matches. Ethics becomes very important in persuasion. As you can see, it is a common violation that you encounter. One of the main things to have an ethical speech, to have an ethical persuasion, is always look at your goal. If your goal is completely self-serving, if you are not there to bless your audience, to give something to your audience, you are there selfishly, and you can be led into unethical behavior. The psychology continues. We talked about latitude of acceptance a little bit before. And this can be a large challenge whenever you are going to go publicly speak, and why your audience analysis is so important. Because you will see your latitude of acceptance, your degrees of persuasion, if your audience is going to be strongly opposed to you versus strongly in favor of what you're saying. It's easy to motivate someone that is in favor of what you're telling them. It's easy to go out and talk about changing a person's diet when you're in front of a group of people that have decided they want to change their diet. It is an easy sale, as they would say, but it makes persuasion very simple. On the other hand, if your audience is opposed to it, you now have a lot of trouble with trying to move them and persuade them to change something, to buy something, to view the world differently. So once after you identify your audience, find out where they go on this latitude of acceptance. If they are opposed, you must open up with something in the neutral category, something where you can connect with them, bond with them, because people like people who are like them and like them. For that reason, you want to make sure that you establish that early. This is what we have in common. This is how I am part of you. This is how come. And then you can start to introduce something they may not be receptive towards, because you've already moved them away from just dismissing your message, and maybe they become moderately or slightly opposed because they turn out that yes, you connected with your audience, so your persuasion can be more effective. Speaking of 6 principles, here are the 6 principles that you encounter when you are trying to persuade people. Reciprocity. If I give you something, you like to give me something back. That's why at dinner, when you're at a restaurant, they give you the mints. They give you something with the check. Because in so doing, you now feel obligated. Or perhaps you've been invited to someone's birthday. Well, you're more likely to go if they attended your birthday or if they gave you a gift. We feel obligated to people that have given us something. So reciprocity is a big tie-in whenever you are looking at how to persuade an audience. Consistency and commitment. People want to be consistent and follow through on their commitments. This goes to your ethos. When you start looking at your ethos, your pathos, and your logos, your ethos that you establish early on in your presentation, in your introduction. If you are a person with good ethos, good credibility, are trusted, they will take it when you commit something to them, that you will do so, and that you'll do so consistently. This helps with persuasion. Social proof. Social proof, we see it often in advertising throughout. We like to hear about how 9 out of 10 families, 4 out of 5 doctors. We have social evidence. Your neighbor bought our product. So automatically we begin to say, oh, well, if they like it, then it must be a good product. It must be something good. And social proof becomes an important attachment for you. As I mentioned on my last slide, liking. This is something we encounter often in many persuasive things, is you come out and you compliment your audience. You like them for a reason. You like them because, wow, they are great people. They're attending this conference and they are here to see you. You like them. They're your kind of people. People like that. So if you like them, they have a tendency to like you back. And often you'll see this where people will begin their speech with complimenting their audience. You see it in sales because oftentimes the attention getter is something people like about you. Authority. Authority is similar to social proof. Authority actually, though, is when you're using your in-text citations to create ethos and authority within your speech. So you would have something along the lines of doctor or researchers or any number of established authorities that you can say, this is why they believe that. And because of that, people tend to trust authority figures. That's why when you see people selling medicines or health treatments in a commercial, they're wearing lab coats because that's what is expected. If someone's talking about legal matters and they come out in a police uniform, automatically you're going to say that person's an authority on the law because they're a policeman or a police person. Scarcity. If we think the opportunity is going away, we don't want to miss out. We don't like to miss out on things. So scarcity is a very effective method. Buy now. Join us now because time is running short. Donate now. Our fundraiser ends in 2 hours. All the scarcity aspect of it motivates people to get over that last hurdle that they might be resisting that form of the persuasion. Here are some of the different speeches you may give on persuasion. And in so doing, this gives you a little format and ideas about possibilities. Persuasive speeches on questions of fact. Analyze a question of fact. In this case, you're going to rely heavily on the scientific method. You're going to rely heavily on your in-text citations. You're going to be presenting something that's a question of fact, such as, do aliens exist? Is marijuana safe or is it dangerous? Do video games cause violence or do they not contribute to violence? These are common questions of fact that we have encountered within our society within the last decade. Aliens probably going back a little bit farther than that. Video games definitely not going back before the 70s. But these are all different types of question of fact. Question of fact is a good persuasive speech. One thing you must remember when you're doing a question of fact is you need to state what your opinion is. You can't just throw out information and then at the end go, well, what do you think? No, because this is a persuasive, not an informative speech. So you need to have that last action statement. So in your thesis, you're going to have the statement, I believe there are aliens. I believe video games do not cause violence. And then you'll build your paper around that, and then you'll come back to that at the end where you say, now that you've heard my argument, I'm going to tell you that aliens exist. And if you believe like I do that aliens exist, contribute to this organization which is doing research into intergalactic life. And that automatically ties your speech well together, and it's a very good question of fact persuasive speech. Persuasive about values. We have values. We know right from wrong. But there are gray areas. Philosophers make an entire living examining this, writing books, publishing, talking to us, because we might have something we feel is right or something we feel is wrong, and it becomes very emotional. This is the one where you need to have that good audience analysis, because when you're talking about individuals' values, it's very dynamic. Each individual has their own unique one. Plus, on top of that, you're going to encounter resistance most frequently in this type of speech. So when you're looking at this, what you're actually looking at, is it right or wrong to eat animals? Discrimination of many types, including based on orientation. Is it wrong? Is it wrong for your values? Chemical weapons, why are they immoral? Why are they wrong? Human cloning, is it justified morally? Should we do it? Should we not do it? Not a question of fact, because these are actual moral questions that you examine. So you're not going to say, oh, this is a fact. No. Morals are more pliable than facts, and for that reason, you really need to, once again, you will state your belief. You'll say, I believe it's morally wrong to clone people. And then what you'll do in your body of your speech, you're actually going to take the time to list moral objections, not scientific evidence, but moral. Explore, why is it wrong? Is it wrong because of the human soul? Is it wrong because we're devaluing human life? What is exactly wrong with it, or what is right about it? And you'll do it from a moral perspective. Persuasive speech about policy. Policies are everywhere. You leave your house, you probably have a homeowner's policy about things that can be in your yard. Your drive downtown, there's probably some city policy or ordinance about parking. And when you're in a business or you're in a school setting, there are policies that guide every aspect of how you engage with people, how things are presented, and what occurs. Changing these policies can completely change people's lives. We're currently looking at voting rights and how those policies, they're looking to change those so that it can be very impactful. So you'll have agenda, the policy formation, policy adoption, policy implementation, and evaluation. Now, when you're building one of these, you're going to be starting at the agenda. But if you're going to say a policy, then it's good in your supporting evidence. How would you implement it? How would it be adopted within the community? And how would you evaluate it at the end? So you would utilize this entire 5 points to examine the policy as well, and as you're at the same time trying to persuade people to change a policy. Here are some. Hate speech should be banned in college. Music CDs, sorry, showing my age there. Downloadable music, should it be rated for violence and profanity? What should a college's sexual harassment policy look like? Smoking, should it be banned? Vaping, should there be banning on that? So you automatically begin to see how these policies are out in the community, how they're impacting each individual's life in your audience, and how a change could impact each of those people. Remember, in all these speeches, especially with persuasive speech, you are focused on your audience. You want your audience to be blessed, to be given something. So in this way, always direct your speech to them, not to a government, not to your own satisfaction, but to resolving an issue for your audience. You always want to gain immediate action. That is the reason why you're publicly speaking. When we talk about Monroe's, which we're going to touch on here, and we're going to explore a little bit more in another video, but what we want to do is we want to have people go, wow, that's a very persuasive speech. Now I'm going to leave, go home, and do nothing about what the person talked about because I feel helpless, I don't know where to go, and it's probably too much trouble for me. For that reason, at the end of your speech, you have an action statement that clearly defines for your audience what they need to do, how they can help, how they can assist. And by doing this, your audience gets done listening to your speech and they go, I'm going to get on my cell phone and I'm going to pledge right now, or I'm going to sign the petition for that change of policy. Any number of things, but you want them to have an immediate action that they can take. In some cases, if you're talking about changing a person's diet and that you need them to eat more healthily and you really want them to live a better life, you can also ask them to pledge to do it without a cell phone, without a website, but a body poll. All right, when you leave here today, I want every person in this audience to pledge they will not text and drive. Hands go up. By doing so, when they get in their car and they pull out their cell phone, they're about ready to start texting, they go, oh, I promised that speaker I wasn't going to text and drive. Boom, your immediate action worked. Of course, your speech is going to be built off of ethos, pathos, and logos, as we've talked about. Your ethos being your trustworthiness, your credibility, the audience's view of you as you're coming in. Pathos will be your emotional appeals, the appeals that actually will change people's minds. Your logos, the logic, will reinforce those changes that the audience has adapted to. Here's our Monroe's motivated sequence. This comes to us from the 1950s. It's been in sales a long time. And I bet you have encountered this because I know I've encountered it in a number of places, from buying a car to even walking down the center of a mall when the people at the kiosk come out and try to sell something. The first thing you always want to do is grab your audience's attention, and you grab their attention through use of the attention getter. In this case, this is your opportunity to say you like the people, why you like them. You know, boy, you have a great look at the family. You people look like so much fun. Wow, I am happy to meet you. You just seem so full of energy. That is oftentimes the attention getter you'll see. But then they'll create a problem. You know, you have kids, they're growing so fast. You need to make sure you capture those memories. And then they move to satisfaction. And we can capture those memories for you by setting you up to take pictures today of your family. And then visualize your kids are off to college. The house, you're an empty nester. But you know what? You have photos. You have pictures to reflect back upon. Finally, the action statement, the act, the clincher. Now, can I sign you up for getting your pictures done next week? Boom, that is Monroe's. You see it, we'll dive more into it, but this is our first introduction to it. What we wanted to talk about in this short presentation was the importance of persuasion, ethics, psychology, types, and Monroe's motivated sequence. As always, if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me. Let me know, send me a message, whatever you need. As we're moving into the persuasive speech, you will see that storytelling is going to be connected in there. Informative speech elements are going to be connected in there. And this, the persuasive speech, is your big speech for the year. And by doing so, you will be able to effectively apply all the concepts we've learned so far throughout the semester.